Uh, yeah. So, like already Joel has discussed most of the things. I was just working out the architecture and also like how do we have apps connect Node.js applications and or anything else connect to Redis. So, uh, like two things we definitely need. We definitely need to have a cluster because we know that we like if we don't have a cluster, then we can only use one core, whereas our machines are four cores. So that is one thing why it makes sense to have a cluster of Redis servers. And secondly, we also want failover. So definitely we need a master slave setup as well. So these two things, considering these two, I'll tell you guys what I'm thinking at and we'll, what we can do and what we should look at. So, idea is to have a Redis master and two slaves to be attached to it. That is what people say is the ideal setup. That each master has two slaves. We can also do with one slave if we really think that it's going to be an issue to have two of them. So what we can have is basically I think it would be a good idea to have three masters and three or six slaves, depending on how how we are placed in respect of uh, our memory and in respect of our budget and everything. So the first setup, like I've just shown that there is. Uh, can you guys see my pointer?
No, I cannot see a pointer.
Mouse pointer is not visible.
So currently we can see equipment needed to set up a small office.
No,
Huh?
the pointer is mouse pointer. We can't see
Oh,
it.
Oh, no, I
no,
can't.
wait. So you can't. The what do you see on the screen? What is the?
So we see a Google search for equipment needed to set up a small office.
Oh, okay. I'm sharing the wrong window. Then wait.
That's also relevant.
Of course, but that's not our current discussion. Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
can you see my highlight?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So this is what I was considering. Either three or if we have two, then we write on master and read from the slave. And if master goes, like idea was that there are two slaves and one master. Every write is done on the master and read is done from the slave. And if the master goes down, then the slave takes over as the master. One of the slaves will take over as a master. So one setup can be, which is the straightforward thing. We write directly to the Redis master, and we have a configuration for the Redis slaves. This is like a completely direct. So we specify which are the IPs for write and which are the IPs for read.
Oh, can you sort of specify that? I haven't seen it as yet. I'll have to look at how to do that. So right now, in code at least, what I have seen is you just give what nodes to connect to, either in clustered mode or in a simple mode.
Okay.
I haven't seen a way where you can specify which to write to, which to read from. I look at the options, but I
I
haven't seen one as yet.
okay. So probably since I have not looked at how things are done with Node, I was just looking at how people architect it from the Redis point of view.
Okay, okay.
So I was looking at the setup that has been basically done by the Bloomreach guys that you had.
Okay, okay.
So what actually they had is one master and one slave, and they to just like say that okay, if the master fails, then change the DNS over to the slave.
Okay.
So there is some, they don't have this read write, but I read this on another architecture that I'll have to check where it is. But this was one place. But if you think that is going to be a problem, we can do without it.
Okay.
My second architecture is, again, this assumes a separate read, separate write, but we can do through a single channel. So here what is assumes is we have a HA proxy in between. HA,
Okay.
there are two different ports configured. So HA proxy has a write, a one port for write and another port for read. So the write port points to the master, and it keeps pinging the master. And if the master is down, then it will start pointing to the other server, which is the master now. So if considering that you are thinking that we don't have a separate, like a single read write, what we can do is we can actually change it to like this, something like this.
Okay.
Uh, so what we can basically internally, we don't really need to, let's say we don't have this read write thing.
So it's like a direct master slave thing. Master goes down.
Yeah, so
One slave is promoted to
yeah,
master.
so here you don't really need to know the IP address, like the IP and the port of each Redis machine anymore,
Okay.
or Redis, each Redis. You just need to know the IP and port of the HA proxy.
Okay.
Of course, this is a single point of failure right now, so we'll need to build something more resilient, because if HA proxy itself goes down, then we have an issue. Of course, right now I'm planning to put HA proxy on the same machine where Node.js is, but the application can crash. If the application crashes, then we don't have any way to go around it. So we'll need to build some redundancy and a better way of handling this. But something around this architecture, that you where you are looking at, you're saying that the Bloomberg guys, they
Yeah.
just use the DNS.
Yeah.
So instead of DNS, what I'm doing is I'm putting it behind the HA proxy. They have this also. They did this in the more complex architecture. That there is
Okay.
basically they have more than one HA proxies. So they have multiple HA proxies in between, and HA proxy proxies to the Redis machine. So in this case, if the first one goes down, you basically it takes it out, and we'll have what we'll see in the second one.
Okay.
Uh,
So Mehul, I have
yeah,
one query. So is it like this HA proxy is like having all the information of all the nodes?
yeah, we'll need to configure that in HA proxy.
Okay.
So
So
HA proxy like doesn't discover anything. We have to tell HA proxy that okay,
okay,
these are the nodes which exist. So this is more of a deployment problem, which we'll,
okay,
like, I have a few things in mind which does sort this. I've discussed this before, but we have not moved to that. But at least we are like making the move towards that. So if the master is down, the
hmm,
first one, then Sentinel will make the slave one as the master, and then the slave two is still there. Now HA proxy will basically internally remove the first master, and you still read from the master now.
and who will bring back that the master who got down?
That is a manual thing then, because
Okay,
we don't know why it has failed. Right? Maybe over the time we can see what can be done if there are some automatic ways to bring it up. But
okay.
that is something later. Right now it's supposed to be manual, and then we can bring it up again as a master or bring it up as a slave is up to us, because then already this is a master. If you bring that up as a master,
Hmm.
then what is there in the current master will get lost. So we'll have to probably bring it up as a slave.
So, but maybe we could have write some script, correct? Which can bring that another instance up and make it master or slave.
So usually it does what is the ideal way is, since we don't want a downtime,
Hmm.
bringing a new machine up means it's a downtime, right?
No,
You always promote the existing slave to a master first, and
no,
then
that's
if you
fine.
want, you can, yes. So
So,
you can bring up a new slave in place of, like, remove the existing master which has failed and start a new slave in place of that. That is, of course, that can be done, but you can not wait till you start a new master, because that is a long time period.
no, no,
You
no.
all,
My point is not about promoting the new instance to master. It's more about your system is continuously running, and your script or that failover process basically it's currently checking that I have like one instance which is down. So I'm bringing back one more instance and making it slave like.
yeah, we can do that. That is something secondary. So of course that is up to us how we want to handle it and how we are looking at the deployments and things. So we can do that, that the master is down, so
Hmm.
the slave becomes the master, and we bring up another slave instance.
Because I have seen the similar thing in Solar basically. So in my past organization, we were using Zookeeper basically. So
Yeah,
Zookeeper was So Zookeeper was having information of all the nodes, all the Solar shards basically,
yeah.
and basically Zookeeper was bringing up the any node which was down.
Correct. So yeah, I was looking at probably Zookeeper or Consul, one of the two things as the tools to do basically put all this information. Probably Consul sounds like a much better tool to do handle all this, but yeah, a lot of people use Zookeeper and etcd.
Okay, okay.
So yeah, but
So just I shared. I mean, I have seen like in my past organization about Zookeeper actually. So
yeah,
it
so
was bringing all those nodes which were down and bringing up.
correct, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Zookeeper and etcd can be used. A lot of like I know that OpenStack guys do this. So
Okay.
internally, actually, the Rackspace guys use that too, those two things,
Okay.
because they basically Rackspace is with the cloud servers are basically a modified version of OpenStack. So OpenStack
Okay.
internally uses etcd and Zookeeper to, like, store configurations and all that kind of a thing, to bring up new servers and all that. They internally use that. I know that. So yeah, that is definitely there. But that is secondary. We'll come to all those things later. But the idea is, right now, if the master goes down, HA proxy knows that, okay, this is down, and it will take the other Redis, which is the master, and start writing to that.
So this is configuration in HA proxy, right? There's no
Yeah.
manual thing that we have to do.
No. So this is something what a HA proxy will look like. I was working on it. I didn't get enough time to do that.
Sorry, are you showing us something right now?
Yeah. Wait. I'm just opening it.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I'll show it to you. So you guys see the drop down now? The console.
No.
Yeah, I can see it.
So you see the
And
console window, which has a log, that config file, right?
Yeah.
Rajnish, can you still see?
Yeah. I can see now.
Yeah. So in that, the last three sections, one is defaults Redis.
Yeah.
Okay, so that defines that some kind of defaults that you have for Redis. So this is a TCP socket. We have set that the timeout for the connect, set the timeout for the server, set the timeout for the client. Then you define what is the front end. The front end is basically what the node services will connect to. So we are what we are saying is start a front like a listen on this IP at this port with name Redis and with default backend as BK Redis, where we are defining the backend as BK Redis, and we are giving some options. Where if you see we are giving option called TCP check. In the TCP check, we are asking to connect to Redis, send a ping, and expect a pong. So these are the some of the checks which are there. In the like, if ping is given, then expect a pong. If replica info on replication is given, it should say that the role is master. If you say quit, it should return a OK. And then we are defining which server to connect to.
Okay.
We can give multiple servers here, which I still need to check how exactly to define, and I'll probably have it demoed by tomorrow.
Okay.
So this kind of thing. So now what you need to do is just connect to HA proxy on the basically the what you have defined as the bind in the front end. So you don't need to know which all Redis servers are there behind. So if the Redis server dies or something, that will automatically handle which one to connect to.
Okay. So
So
this
your
is
app, yeah. So
this is the
basically your app.
replication part, right?
No,
This
this
is
is not
not
a replication part. This is basically a proxy part, which you don't need to know if this covers clustering as well as replication ka ki no, the part that you don't need to have multiple Redis IPs defined in your configuration, or if like the one which is defined goes down, what do you do then? Then you need to redefine a new one.
okay. Okay. So this sort of makes sure that the front end IP port that you have defined is always available.
Always the same, yeah. So you don't need multiple of them, or you don't need to keep changing them. This is like what you have done with Nginx. Basically, Nginx operates at the HTTP level. This operates at the TCP level. In fact, this can actually replace Nginx also. HA proxy can act. That is something that I had proposed long ago, but we need. It's a more complex architecture where each web machine has uh, a or a group of web machines will have a Nginx. There will be multiple of these web machines, and all of them will be behind a HA proxy. So HA proxy is more of a TCP like level. So HTTP, since HTTP is a subsection of TCP, we can use a HA proxy ahead of it. Yeah. So that is the whole idea that if the one of the masters goes down, you don't need to reconfigure things, or I don't need to give you multiple IPs and ports right from the start. So yeah, what I was looking was in terms of a machine-wise setup. The This is more of a completely constrained part. If or I would say this is the minimum we should have. If we can afford a bigger budget and something more expensive, we can do that. But at least we can do what we can do is this: we can have a machine one with one master and two slaves, and a machine two with one slave and two masters. So if even if one of the machines go down, we have the other machines where everything can take over. I'm not sure. Are you guys following? I'm not sure if.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
All right.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
was in mute.
Yeah, I know. Since you went to mute, I'm not sure if there was a problem or you went to mute. So basically, the connections remain the same. It's just the configuration that changes. Like if we have two slaves, and right now I'm actually assuming one master, one slave in the machine thing, but just drew a diagram which had two slaves per master also. What we can have,
Okay.
but if not, we can basically cut down the last four lines and have this kind of a setup where HA proxy will basically have all the master IP addresses and the slave and read write to that only.
Okay.
And if things goes down, it can change over to the slaves.
Okay.
So that's the kind of thing that these guys have done. So here they have this read and write. I need to see if HA proxy can say that. Here what they've said is that the Redis slaves can only read and Redis master only writes. So you don't need to do that. That is something that is defined in the HA proxy. How they've done it, I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know. But this is what they've specified, that Redis slaves are used for the reads and master is used for the writes. This is good for the performance reason. In fact, people even do this when setting up MySQL, that everything goes to the master where everything is written, and the replica machines are one which are read from.
Read replication. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the kind of thing they set up, that these are behind the HA proxy. You just need to connect. When you try to write, it will send everything to a master. When you try to read, everything will be read from the slaves.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I was considering should we have HA proxy or not, but I think it's a good idea to have it, because for one, I can definitely have it up and running in the given time, but one worry is that it becomes a single point of failure. But considering that if it's not there, then also we have something which is much better of, where we can say, okay, we can't have HA proxy as a single point of failure. Let's connect directly to Redis. So that is something that I need inputs from you guys,
So
especially yeah,
we
you and
can connect directly to the Redis thing, but the whole point is what you said earlier, that if one node fails, we need to have all the nodes that we.
yeah. So basically, you'll have to write the monitoring part yourself. Here, you don't need to worry about monitoring, because that's what HA proxy is handling by itself. You
So we
just
don't
need,
need to do the monitoring as well.
you know, what I,
The
yeah,
client provides all the information. So if you have Sentinel enabled,
yeah,
the master slave thing becomes the headache of Redis itself.
yeah, exactly.
Right?
So Sentinel provides the failover. It doesn't provide anything to the app, right? So your app
So
would have to
it provides the failover, which means that when something does fail over, the client can take the correct action. So the client,
uh,
since it knows about all nodes, will know which node to query.
okay,
But I mean, this is theory. We'll have to check it out ourselves.
right. So I'm
I
not
don't
sure
think
if,
we'll have to write anything.
all right, but you'll need to know which all clients are there. So then there
Yeah.
is still that headache that if we dynamically bring up new clients,
Then we
then
don't have access to them. Yes.
yes, then you need to basically restart your application. Here we rely on HA proxy to handle this.
Yeah. So
So
if
that's
there is
why
a way we can make HA proxy more reliable, then maybe that's the way to go.
basically the idea is supposed to be that you have multiple HA proxies, you don't have just one. That's the only way to do it.
This is
So
like adding more and more stuff just
so
because
that
you
is
want to
always
get
how,
resilient now.
but yeah, no, that is how always uh, you design an architecture, that if that like particular service goes down, then you have other ones taking over. You cannot design a service not to fail at all.
Yeah. Okay.
There are so many things that can make it fail. So be it
Okay.
HA proxy or be it whatever application, it can fail for whatever reason, right?
Huh.
So the thing is, currently as we are doing it, HA proxy becomes a single point of failure. But the way our things are architected, there are a lot of single point of failures, right? Like Nginx is actually a single point of failure if you look at it. All our connections goes through Nginx. So if the Nginx dies,
Yeah.
we are basically our whole system is down. So we
Yeah.
do have such single points of failure, and only way to go around it is have, like, we only have one web machine. We'll need a multiple web machines with multiple engine, like whole setup. That's the only way to have a basically guarantee that we don't the complete uptime.
Okay.
So that is something that is a basic fundamental thing in building like redundancy is the only way to go around these things. Uh, yeah, Rajnish, if you have something that you'd want to add or you would want to ask about in relation to what you'd want to look at testing wise or as a performance wise or anything that you'd want to cover in this.
Uh, Not as such currently.
One thing I can think of is that in testing, we definitely want to look at all our configurations, which says that this is more of an integration testing, which we want to ensure that we are not trying to write to the slaves. I'm not sure what really happens. So our configurations in HA proxy should match what for read should only be for the slaves and write should be for the masters. We'll need to ensure that this is correctly handled in our integration test. So this is something that I'll have to work with you on.
Yeah, sure. But in
And of
that
course,
case, when you are promoting a slave to a master, so what will
yeah,
happen?
yeah, I was coming to that only because I don't know yet. It is something that I'm trying to understand, but we'll have to ensure that this is also handled correctly.
One thing which I was saying in the morning to Joel also in the I'm not sure if you were there at that time. That I mean, if do we have any kind of configuration where same node can work as both like read and write mode? So in Solar, I have seen some kind of thing. So you don't need those multiple instances, and basically your technology is taking care of those kind of things. Because see, it's more about you need to create a replication for master, you need to create replication for slave, and then if slave master goes down, then you are making slave to master. Then because writing is happening only via master, so so it's a bit complex process. So I'm
See,
not too
we can always read from the master as well. There's no issue with that. But we cannot write to both, right? We cannot write to slave. We can only write to the master.
So Rajnish, it's sort of different from this thing that we were discussing.
okay.
So in what we were discussing only master and slave, and we were saying that, and my assumption was that we only do direct operations on the master, and the slave is just a dumb listener who's replicating all our data. So the discussion we had was that eliminate slaves and have the master do the master slave thing somehow, because Solar was doing the same. Right? But what Mehul is saying right now is that just because we have the slave, we are using the slave as well in our architecture. So in the architecture I had shown in the morning, slave wasn't being used at all. It was just sitting there as a backup when the master fails. So in the architecture that Mehul is saying, we are actually optimizing it more for read replication rather than just replication. So all writes go to the master, and any read operations that we want are done quickly from the slave. So in a sense, we are using the resources we have instead of just having
Yeah.
the slave
Also,
sitting there.
considering that the Redis is single-threaded, it makes more sense to have read given out to the slaves because
Yeah,
it will be faster also, right? Because it's not right like we are not writing to the slaves all the time.
yeah.
Okay.
So we can actually use that, and since the read operations are much faster, we can do much more of that.
Yeah.
Of course, then we have this one issue that we've seen with memcache. We had sorry, not with the memcache, with beanstalk, that before our writes happened, we were trying to read the same data. So if that kind of
Right.
thing race condition happens, we'll need to ensure that then we read from the master only. So this is something that we'll have to put it in our test. So probably Rajesh, another thing for you to test. And actually it's something that we'll have all of us have to keep in mind. So if
Okay.
there's something like a session data which we
Hmm.
are trying to set to Redis, and before it is replicated to the slaves, we are trying to read it or some kind of a data. I'm not sure what data. It can be any data that we are writing to a master, and even before it is replicated to the slave, we are trying to read it. So in that case, what to do? Then it becomes a problem. Then we need to be able to read those things from the master itself.
So
So
we'll
this
have
is
to look at this because most of the operations that we do are sort of like in a pipeline. So we do like multiple operations to a same node, and we want those operations to happen sort of like atomically. So I'm not too sure. So the read replication would help us if we are reading a lot of things from Redis. But
right.
currently, I don't think we are reading as much from Redis. We are doing more set operations in Redis. So we'll have to see. I mean, from the code, we'll have to figure out if read replication will help us more or not. Or we'll have
Okay.
to change our current code structure to sort of leverage read replication. So it's
Okay.
something we'll have to work on.
All right.
Would also depend on what kind of operations we are doing.
Right. So is it something that uh, considering this usually Redis is again used as something where you read often from, right? So I'm not sure what how often do we read things, but I would assume that we read a lot from it also.
So we don't do single read operations. So most of our operations are usually the read like sets. So we are putting data into sets, doing some operations on those sets, and then reading the results of the set operation.
Okay.
So I'm not too sure how much read replication will help there.
I guess if you, that should still help because the it gets divided out, right? It doesn't affect your like your writes are not blocked while the set operations is happening.
So reads are not blocked while the set operation is happening.
Okay.
So the thing is that unlike, let's say, MySQL, Redis doesn't really block much. It's like
Okay.
blazing fast. So even with single-threaded things, it does things like really fast.
Yeah,
I mean, at least we
because
have
that's
not reached a state where we have seen Redis block anything. All Redis operations get done in microseconds for us.
all right.
So even with a single node, we've been having like really good performance with Redis. So this is a good idea. We just have to figure out if our current code sort of will get, um, is it optimized for something like read replication, or will it actually slow us down or something like that? So
All right.
I have to check. So I didn't think about read replication as such.
All right.
We can look at it.
So then I would say that we still need a slave, right? Because
Now we still need
the
a slave for being resilient.
yeah. So we can start with this architecture where I've specified in machine one we have one master and two slaves, and machine two is one slave and two master, and basically we can still see what happens when we read from the slave. Are we running into some issue, or else we can always do that, right? We can read write to only masters, and read can be from anything.
Hmm. Okay, we can look at this. Looks like something we can test out.
Yeah, so this is something that let's look at and then finalize. So, but we have some ideas on what are the things to look at, and I think which it should be a good idea to document this tomorrow. I'll start doing that. I'll figure out the HA proxy configs and start documenting, and I'll need inputs from you and Raj to
Okay.
for like how things want to should work on the application end.
Okay.
What kind like things like so we have one port and one IP now of the HA proxy, so that should get basically that is what you need in your config then, and that becomes your Redis IP and Redis port, and HA proxy should handle the rest of the internal working. You guys don't need to bother about it then.
Okay.
And if anything else that you guys need in terms of the interface that I need to build, then it would be a good idea to know it beforehand so we can design it that way. Like the read part, like you said, that we might want to read from the master again. So I'll see how. the read and the writes are separated. So if I can specify that write should only happen from the master and read should only happen
So
from the slave.
one thing that you can probably look at is how does pipelining affect this read replication part,
All right.
right? So we do a lot of things in a pipeline. So if
Okay.
a pipeline command is sent to a node, how does it handle uh, to HA proxy? How does it handle that? Does it
So
only
HA
proxy to
proxy
the
doesn't do anything. HA proxy just send it to your Redis machine, like Redis instance. So what we need to do is look at how Redis, like how does that work?
So I know that pipelines don't work on multiple clusters, multiple nodes in a cluster if the data is not on like a single node. Even set operations for that matter. Both the sets have to be on the same node.
All right.
Uh,
So
it,
what
it,
basically you see in this case, HA proxy will send everything to one machine only, or maybe like one connection will go to one and other will go to the other. So that way,
so
it's
how does it sort of then say, okay, this is a read command, this is a write command?
I'm not sure. This is something I need to read up
Okay.
because I just started reading up on this and I've not really gone down. So far only I've done gone down to the where how we can proxy it. Second
Okay.
part would be how I can proxy it to multiple machines and see that if then third would be proxying through the master slave and try the failover. Then after that the fourth part would be doing this.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. So something that you probably would need to look at when
Yeah,
you're doing this is how
right,
pipelining works.
right, fine.
Okay. Awesome. Rajnish, do you have any other questions? Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
regarding this right now.
Okay.
All right. So well, everybody has. If you also having something, then let me know.
Only thing is that maybe after the one round of trial, maybe I might have lot of queries. Not right now
Yeah. So what I will
because
do is, hopefully by tomorrow I'll have some kind of HA proxying enabled. Then we can start looking at it. Though I don't know how what you
okay.
can do and how you can do probably because it's more or less supposed to be a transparent thing. So
Hmm.
it might be more useful to the developers than you. But we can start figuring out what you can look at.
No, that's okay. I mean, as soon as they will be starting, even I might have a lot of ideas coming, so it's okay.
All right.
Yeah. So once we have a small test kind of system ready and people are trying, so even I mean Joel and Raj, even they will have more ideas. Similarly, even I will have more thoughts.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Uh, Joel, uh, after this call, if you, maybe we can talk to 5 minutes, maybe. I've seen some mail from Jay, and in CLSP, what they are proposing, it's a major change. I mean, they are changing everything.
So
So
I
I
don't know
think,
what Henry is talking about. Let's take this offline.
yeah. So I try to understand what in when what I understood. I think it's completely changed the things. So we may need to talk in the call because I am seeing it's complete change. I mean, what we have done. I mean, they are trying to say, I mean, get rid of that algorithm. So what we have done, the entire logic, it doesn't make sense. I mean, they just need a plain calling. So it's totally different thing.
So, so he says that he imported something and like out of the 200 contacts, only 20 were dialable. So that's either because he has due dates which are in the future and they can't be called. So he's
Yeah.
not
So that's
understanding what we are given him.
agree. That's one thing. Or another thing could be that there is something wrong with those numbers, and that valid thing will also come in the picture. Correct.
So
And
if he has wrong numbers, that's another thing, right? 200. Um, so there are two things, right? So he has a contact list of 200, which he
hmm
imports in.
hmm
And one thing is that only 20 get imported,
yeah.
right? So that is because he had some error in his whatever, right?
hmm
So that's one thing. The other thing is that he had 200 contacts, 200 got imported, and then he can see only 20 as dialog.
So I mean, we hello.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
hear
okay.
you.
So I think, I mean, we need to talk in detail because either there is something really wrong with the, because ideally I was assuming that Kofi should have explained him that part, but there is no mail from Kofi on this. So either he didn't reply till now, or maybe then there is something wrong. Because from we what we are getting all the requirements from Kofi,
Yeah.
and so there is still seems to be a big gap. And the priority number and the number of time it has dialed. So I think or algorithm what we are doing, I think we have explained the truth table a couple
Yeah.
of times where when to call and when it will be repeated calls. So I think it's still a lot of big gap actually.
ठीक है.
Yeah.
ठीक है. We'll get on a separate call. If you guys want to like join in the conversation, you guys are welcome as well. I will stop this one.